fortunate are we in this Boxing Day Test match that every session we greet you, we say, wow, that has been something for us to see with Sunil Gavaskar and Justin Langer here. You saw a very serene partnership building between these two Indian players on completely different generations, and then something somewhere went wrong, the communication, and that just triggered that flurry of wickets.
Well, that's what happens, you know, one wicket gets you two, sometimes one wicket gets you three. And that's what happened, a little bit of a misunderstanding over there. And you talked about generations.
Australia, it was a brilliant partnership. In fact, as soon as Virat came in after about 3 or 4 balls, I thought he's in, he's set. You could see he was watching the ball very closely, his feet were dancing. And of course, young Jaswal, his numbers are extraordinary. So to have the Australians will be celebrating tonight to get a wicket and a run out. And then, of course, Virat Kohli's dismissal, things turned around quickly.
You know, you set for 74, you see you lose your captain early, and then there is this 100-run partnership that starts blossoming. You see both players trying different approaches, showing a whole lot more restraint. What happened exactly from your perspective when there is a run out like that? Whose call is it? Where did the miscommunication come from?
See, I think, look, it would have been a quick run, and somebody like Virat Kohli would definitely have made it. But the thing was, he looked at the fielder. When you look at the fielder, when you turn, you've lost that vital second. And so naturally, then you think, no, I won't be able to make it. Your balance is completely not there. If your balance is on the front, where you're going to take the run. Now, see, he looks there. Jaiswal's call, because he's hit the ball, it is his call. And it would have been a tight run. I'm not saying it would not have been a run. And so then because he looked at the fielder, looked at where the ball was, and that is misunderstanding took place and Jaiswal had to go.
You look at that reaction from Yashasvi Jaiswal, you can feel every minute of that heaviness with that he walks back with into the 80s, saying, I'm back in form, I've showed restraint, I've managed to counter Mitchell Starc, who's got my number today. I know we don't talk about milestones often enough, but he would be bitterly disappointed that he has not been able to carry on this innings.
Oh, of course, he'll be disappointed. And actually, I thought it was a risky run, because Pat Cummins is a brilliant athlete. So even if he had have picked it up and they had have gone, Pat Cummins would have gone at the non-strikes. It would have been a
chance. So you're right about the fact that at that stage, the run was, you know, the risk was not really necessary. But it could have been completed only because Kohli is such a fantastic runner between the wickets.
Yes. Sunny ji, speaking about Virat Kohli, we all know he was in the eye of the storm today. He managed to insulate himself, you know, rather than practicing the drive, practicing the defense, he was practicing the leave. We saw that yesterday. So he was in a completely different mindset. But an incident like that, does it throw you off because you then fell back into old habits?
No, got out. But no, I don't think it's a run out. Yeah, it would have been preying on his mind, but, you know, he's far too experiential at that state.
What did you feel?
Yeah, I think I was stunned when he nicked that ball. I just thought he was really set. He was leaving the ball very well. And they'll both be disappointed. They're looking to, when you say to himself in the change room now, oh my gosh, I've been working so hard, I've been so disciplined. Why did I chase that ball? He didn't need to do it. Yeah. But that's concentration.
Yeah, he chased it. That's the thing. Yeah, it can happen. And I just thought that maybe he thought that he was set now and maybe he could go for it. But, you know, I mean, we can find, you know, millions of explanations. The fact is that India is looking at a mountain.
Well, let's talk about that mountain a little bit. What sort of mountain? Is it Everest? Is it more than that? Because you had that 100-run partnership. You need a batter now to be able to stick on, to reach those figures. So what is the task that they have cut out for them, considering the next day too?
Oh, no question. Partnership, we've seen those wickets fall.
You said something very relevant also when it comes to just looking at it in good form. A completely different contrast from the innings that we saw from Australia with the majority of partnerships. 5 of them 50 plus, 1 of them century stands. Now that is something that you have potentially 2 left-handers who need to negotiate that for you.
Yes, and I think Nathan Lyon will come into play. He hasn't had much of a role to play in the entire series. But now with what we saw when Washington Sundar and Ravindra Jadeja were bowling, they were getting the ball to turn, grip and turn, and maybe get a little more bounce as well. So Nathan Lyon will certainly enjoy bowling to the left-hander. There are 3 left-handers now, two at the crease. Washington Sundar has to come into bat. He will probably be used a little bit more. Clearly, India need to put their heads down. Like I said, they have to try and take their innings, their first innings past lunch, maybe as close to tea as possible, and therefore get as close as possible to the Australia total. Australia will not give you the follow-on. Make no mistake. Even if India falls short of 274, Australia will not give you the follow-on. They'll want to bat you out of the game.
Jay, you think about such a long tour, the way that Yashasvi Jaiswal started this Border Gavaskar Trophy, he would have been on another planet, and then, there's the Mitchell Starc threat, and there's being able to get the run. So the restraint that he showed today, the discipline, the moments he knew when to show the attack, the start of his innings, what did you make of it from Jaiswal?
Brilliant. I felt a couple of times when Mitchell Starc's got him out, it was your heart when a young man's playing like that. And then
just negating the swing that we saw from Mitchell Starc as well, what did you notice what was your observation about the adjustments that he made against her?
What he was looking to do was get as close to the ball as possible. And he was very successful because he was then able to play the drives up there. He was able to put the ball around nicely. So good thinking. That shows a good thinking cricketing brain, and very impressive, but run out.
These are he's still extremely young in his career. This is a test team as far as India is concerned in transition. He's a young opener who's a different generation from the time when two of you played. So he has to somehow be able to bring the best of all the worlds that he's seen. Advice to him going forward when he is looking towards, a longer innings. Because he's scored them before.
He's in his 18th test match. When Sachin was in his 18th test. No? You say no.
Yeah,
because
JL just spoke about a comparison with what Sachin had around the same time. But seriously, JL, do you expect the left-hander and the right-hander to be the same?
Oh, hang on, you're not allowed to bump these days, are you?
No, we're not allowed to
be careful with the bump or we might get into trouble. Yeah.
Let's not do that. Let's not get anything involved from that perspective. Speaking of the bump, you bring it up. Beautiful segue, JL. You're a great broadcaster because Virat Kohli very much in the eye of the storm, not just because of what's happened, but because of after Perth, he wanted to see the runs. He's got runs in these grounds here in Australia against this opposition.
He was very disciplined, no question about it.
And there's also the atmosphere. It happens. We will hear the chants, we'll hear all of that outside, but if there's anyone who craves and feeds off that sort of tension, it inspires you, that is Virat, building those partnerships, knowing very well that India did need that partnership.
No question, and we actually were talking about Jaiswal and Sam Constas on air in the last session. I said the difference is Sam Constas would have walked out yesterday to 80,000 bat with those the passionate Indian fans. It must have given you such adrenaline, and that's what Virat feeds off. And he'll also feed off the criticism because he's a warrior, he's a gladiator. So that's why I was not surprised he played so well, so surprised he's still not in.
Well, that's the point. You didn't hear any silence when the hometown boy, Scott Boland, went in with the catch to Virat Kohli, because you could hear it in our commentary box. Everyone was up in arms. Virat just in that dismissal, it happens. It's an instinct, it's a habit. It's sometimes your most...
That's why he has so much success. He has success here at the MCG, where he loves bowling. But he's like every great bowler, it's the length which makes him so difficult, even for someone like Virat. They knew the plan. They actually left the offside open early, so they're tempting Virat, and finally he did. But before that, he was so disciplined, and that's the hallmark of why he's been such a great player.
You said it earlier when we touched upon Rohit Sharma. You said when he's in form, that would have been put away. So that's indicative of the mindset that Rohit Sharma is in. What did you read into the manner of that dismissal from Rohit? Back to open after some time, back in cricket after some time, coming out of a series at home that you haven't scored.
Playing continuously at the age of 37, regularly, no problem. Because your bat speed, everything is there. But the moment you have a break, you must be very, very careful, very, very mindful.
Speaking of the opposition captain with the bat, a very handy 49, a very significant partnership, and then two really key wickets from Pat Cummins today.
Yeah, look, we know that the best teams, the captains stand up and deliver. And he does that. The ball before tee, that was an unbelievable delivery. You and I would have played it easily, but for someone like KL, not so easy. It was actually a perfect delivery, and KL looked in magnificent form again. So the ball before tee, maybe KL was just trying to survive that ball to get to that break. That often happens to even the strongest of minds, but that ball, Pat Cummins is a great leader, not only tactically, but in everything he does.
Those are the moments that make this format especially so testing on every person that is out there in the middle. And the fans, once again, living it up as far as Boxing Day Test match is concerned. For Indian fans, it's most definitely been a mixed bag, but the support, as Sahiba finds out, never really goes anywhere. Understandably, they would feel that way. It's been a decade, actually, since India has been beaten here at the MCG. But speaking about Maruti Suzuki, player to watch today, a 34th Test century from Steve Smith. JL, he's got 16 centuries against India across.
They just did from 4. I'll go to 1 and 2, and I'll reel off 100.
Back down the order, easy hundreds.
Easy, yeah. Well,
that's a hard game, right? Rather than being the US president. And I said, you know what, Desi, I think you're right. So Steve Smith, see hard work opening the bat, and you work back in the middle order and make life. Anyone can bat down.
My highest score in Test cricket was batting at number 4.
Yeah, how easy was it?
Easy.
But it is hard work. Test cricket is hard work. And when you look at the hard work that Steve Smith has done against India in the past, you go back to the dismissal of Travis Head before he could even get set. It's very rare that the captain goes and tells Jasprit Bumrah what to do. But they had a little bit of a conversation. There was a plan. It was executed. The amount that you have played against Steve Smith, with Steve Smith in former formats, what would your plan be to him? What's the plan executed the way it should have been?
My plan really would be for Jasprit Bumrah, who's got this great in-swinger, to go round the wicket to him. And because if he continues to move across, go round the wicket to him, bowl around the middle and leg stump line. Just change the angle a little bit, have that leg slip in position, have somebody at square leg as well. So leg slip, because then, if he nicks that one, but nobody has tried that. I would love to see how he plays, say, a Mitchell Starc, getting the ball to, left hand over the wicket, getting the ball to curve into him. Does he employ the same tactics? But I would certainly look to do that. Somebody who's got a good in-swinger, like Jasprit Bumrah has, I would certainly look to do that, not just from over the
run partnership, because even then, as a bowling unit, you have to think about your bowling plans. Did you bring on the new ball enough? Did you change? Did you get enough overs? Are your part-timers? Did you go at all to your spinners?
If I'm bowling a Pat Cummins or anything, I'm going to bowl a lot of short pitch bowling because he wants to be on the front foot. It's comfortable on the front foot. And yet India hardly bowled him a bouncer. I would have gone that approach, knowing how important that partnership was. I would have gone a lot more aggressive at Pat Cummins and try and break it up early. So I was surprised that didn't happen.
It's been 6 years that an Australian team of top 4 have got half centuries against India in Test matches. Now, this is a team that's been picked. We can speak about selection. We can speak about it should have been a specialist. Why 2 spinners if you don't use? But this is the team that you have picked. So are you utilizing your bowlers in terms of the rotation?
Well, I'm not sure about rotation. I don't think the rotation factor should kick in when you're playing for India. Because when you're playing for India, you should be able to play, you should be able to lay down your life playing for India. You're the blessed one. You're not just the privileged one. You're the blessed one to be able to represent your country among so many millions of, hopefuls. So I think rotation shouldn't be there. But I do believe that maybe there was no way that the new ball attack could have been changed after the way Akashdeep batted and saved the game at the Gabba. Yes, he also bowled well, a little bit outside the off stump. He bowled a lot better then. He didn't bowl as well here, which was pretty much the case with Harshit Rana, who bowled really well in Adelaide, didn't bowl as well in Perth, didn't bowl as well in Adelaide. So maybe now with these two Test matches, maybe bring Harshit Rana back because he's got the extra pace. Neither Siraj nor Akashdeep bowled more than 135. Harshit Rana bowls 142, 145. And he's had a little bit of a break, a little bit of a breather as well. Bring him, I would think, bring him for the next Test match, irrespective of what the pitch is. Because Australian pitches, there will always be a little bit of carry. There might not be too much of grass there, but bring him. And I think that is where India need to use their players. There's a Prasidh Krishna as well. So you want to bring him. He's fresh. But for a final game, do you want to bring somebody who has not played at all in the 4 games? That is again a big call for the team management to take.
I know one thing for certain. Akashdeep, he will bowl very well at Akana. For LSG. That's what I'm concerned. As long as he bowls well for LSG at Akana. But what he has done, I agree, Sonny, but he's got some real talent, hasn't he? He's the way he swung the ball. And
he's got to get more accurate, that's all.
And hitting the stumps.
That's right.
Scott Boland, we just talked about Scott Boland. Similar bowlers in a sense, but he's just got to make sure that he hits that length more consistently and just a little closer. That's where comes the edges and the LBWs come in.
There are two opposition thoughts on this. Ravi Shastri earlier off air, just in conversation, says Mohammad Siraj needs a break. Give him a break from the next game. There are some bowlers, if you give a break, it breaks their rhythm. How would you handle Mohammad Siraj when he's not been able to get the best version of himself so far?
Yeah, I think Siraj perhaps, or be, sort of light-footing anything. You've got to be brutally upfront and say, look, your performance has not been up to scratch, therefore you're being dropped. When you start talking about rested, players get wrong ideas, that they feel that they don't need to up their game. And I think he needs to be told that, no, you're not bowling as well as we expected you. On pitches where the ball has been, the pitches have been helpful, you haven't really bowled well. So clearly, I think that is something that needs to be told. And then that's what I mean. If you've got to make two changes, Prasidh Krishna, Harshit Rana to support Bumrah, by all means do that. But India cannot win this test, the way the situation is. So they have to make sure they don't lose this test and look to win at Sydney, which means that if you have got to have a slightly fresher attack, somebody who you think will support Bumrah a little bit more, go for it. Because these two bowlers have not helped Bumrah.
It's certainly been Australia's 2 days of dominance, 2 days of great moments going their way. But when you look back at what we've seen in the past here at Melbourne, it's certainly been happy memories for not just Indian fans, but Indian players like Cheteshwar Pujara. Let's go down memory lane with him. It has been a dominant day from Australia, no doubt in that session. 34th Test century from Stephen Smith, his 5th in a Boxing Day Test match with Ravi Shastri here, his 11th against India. And it's also been headlines that Virat Kohli has dominated when it comes to the Australian media. We'll talk about that, but first let's talk about our impressions from the morning session, because Australia and Steve Smith had a plan. Did India's bowlers have enough of a plan? Australia all the way in that.
All the way. And I think India ran out of ideas. There's absolutely no doubt about that, because what Australia did was there would have been a game plan. Let's make sure we don't lose too many wickets in that first 45 minutes. Try and get another 50 runs on the board. They were 311 for 6. Their first aim would have been 350. But the rate at which they scored the runs, made the job far easier. It just, I thought the bowling was pretty ordinary. They ran out of ideas, India. Spin wasn't used as much as it should have. It took 40 overs, a gap of 40 overs before Jadeja was introduced into the attack. It took 40 overs for Washington Sundar to bowl his first over. So when you're playing two spinners, sometimes you have to ask the question, why did you play two spinners? What was the need if you don't trust them? And they paid the price for it, because Steve Smith is relentless. He's a master batsman. He's did the hard yards at the Gabba, and that's paid off in this innings, because he was more like his fluent self in this innings. And just the way he adapts to different conditions, different bowlers with his footwork. His footwork changes.
You started as an opener. The year is ending for Steve Smith, where it's almost like reset, back to business. There was a Jasprit Bumrah who did try to bowl in a channel to incite him, but it just was a little bit of negotiation from both ends.
Both ends, and he hit those sixes as well, and some shots on the onside. But that was a real contest. Smith knew he had to get past Bumrah, then the runs would come easily. And let's not forget Pat Cummins today.
Partnership, because India have now conceded a 550-plus partnerships, including the century stand between the captain and Steve Smith. He was getting some of the false shots,
and there was turn. Yeah. The ball was gripping, and sometimes when a spinner comes on, there's a sense of complacency, as you saw with Cummins when the field was up. They didn't just keep a long on, long off for quite a bit of time. That was the field. They could just knock the singles. Once the field came up, he took a chance and was dismissed. So I thought spin could have been used a lot more, especially when you pick two spinners.
Well, you've had it over 100 runs that Australia have managed to do so. Just one wicket to fall. Let's show you the highlights from the morning session. 40 runs scored in that session. A 16th century for Steve Smith against India across formats. That's how much he likes scoring those big ones against India, and just one wicket to fall. So that has been the dominance that we've seen from Australia. Ravi, let's talk about something that has dominated this day since we've been walking in, and that is the headlines and what the media have had to say about Virat Kohli. They are calling for the dethroning of the king, in a sense. Now, before we get into this conversation, let's go.
Yeah.
The way that it's portrayed in the media, you've experienced this before. In Australia, it happens. Australia has had a history of great players who've also shown aggression, intent, sometimes in manners that could be considered offensive. No real reaction there from the media. So how does it really stand, this uproar that we've witnessed?
That you expect that in a home country. I wish our country stands up for our players when things like this happen in a bigger way. And I'm not surprised with this at all, simply because Australia have not won here in almost 14, 15 years. The last time they won a series here was in 2011, or a test match, for example, at the MCG. They've not won a test match since. So when they get an opportunity to go berserk, they will go berserk. And like I said, the match referee has done his job. The fine's been given at 20% of his match fee because there's a precedent. The confrontation between Rabada and Steve Smith, was even more, there was more physical, element there. And he was charged a level 3 punishment, Rabada. Then he went and appealed. It was brought down to level 1 and a 20% fine. So there's a benchmark set there. When the umpires, they have a record of the players over the last 2 years. How often have they offended, the law in many ways? There are some points given over there. There's a voting process in place that takes place, and then they come up with a decision. Then it goes, I think, to the ICC technical committee, who then take a call on the thing. So they would have gone through all that. And like I mentioned, there must be a benchmark somewhere, and a lot would have had to do with the Steve Smith and Rabada confrontation to come down to that 11-1 and give that punishment. So it's handed out by the match referee. There's nothing you can do about it.
That's what. So this has been handed out. Now let's talk about the treatment of Virat Kohli. A couple of years ago, when Virat Kohli was coming here to Australia, I remember media outlets saying, watch out, the king is coming. Come to the stadiums because the king is coming. Now, ever since he's walked into Melbourne, there's been footage that we've seen as what happens at the airports. That sort of imagery. It seems like, because it's Virat Kohli and it's an iconic player, that you want to go a little harsher. It's your experience, you tell me.
Yes, and it's in many ways, it's a little bit of desperation also. So, you're 3 test matches into the series. The scoreline is 1-1. The Border Gavaskar Trophy is still not yours. You got to win at Melbourne. So, all these things, kind of creeping. I've been to Australia many, many times. It's the whole country comes behind the team. Not just the crowds, the media, everyone.
Indian players at times, do you feel they've been singled out? Have you experienced that from your capacity? It looks like that a little bit now, only because today the headlines, actually ever since we've come to Melbourne, the headlines have just been dominated by one Indian player.
Yes, and I'm not surprised because that's why I say I see that sense of desperation. You want to win. If Australia had already been 3-0 up or 2-0 up, the headlines might have been different. So when you're wanting to win badly, it's not often a country comes to Australia and doesn't lose in 10 years, a test match at the MCG, or doesn't win a series in Australia, for 7-8 years. So, I know where that's coming from. It's built up over a period of time. It had to come out somewhere. Someone had to be the target, and then they got the opportunity with that physical incident yesterday. When that physical contact incident happened, they said, this is our chance to get the pens out and, get the paintbrush out and start doing all sorts of things. I saw that thing on Virat's nose.
Yeah.
I mean, they forgot to paint the seam there. Then that would have been a ball.
They didn't talk to you before that.
They will go to any level.
There is also, we understand there's freedom of press and freedom of expression in those ways. The other thing is when you walked in here, and we're just telling you our perspective because we're sitting here in Melbourne. Obviously, we are working for a subcontinent Indian broadcaster, and Ravi has played cricket here. He's come with the team. They've coached here. They've had the success here. There are a lot of former Australian players that are not happy with the fine that has been handed out. But there has been a generation of great Australian players that have, I don't even want to call it behavior, but they've displayed that aggression on the field. And
you can say the player is lucky because of physical contact. You can say whatever you want. You can pass whatever judgment you want. And at the end of the day, it's a match referee.
Sure to talk about
it. It's 20% done, dusted. Chalo, hello. And I promise you, as much as you're saying about the Australian media, the crowd, deep inside, they'll want Kohli to come out and get 100.
Of course, yeah.
I'm telling you.
There's a lot of love here.
Yes, it's both ways. They would want Virat Kohli to come out there and get 100. You know, a typical Australian. And then you'll see. You know, it'll be something. But they'll want him to, you know, come out there and get some runs as well. Because they've seen that happening in the past.
We can just share I can share a small incident. There was a breach of field. We did have someone who came onto the field, went towards the Indian players. Rohit Sharma, as usual, avoided. Virat Kohli actually put his arm around that young fellow, walked with him, tapped him on the back. There was a sense of peace and calm, said, okay, carry on. And on that note, we'll take a breather. When we come back, if you want to see India bat, India have to figure out how to get the best out of Australia, and Steve Smith will discuss that when we return. Thank you so much, gentlemen. So still conducive for batting. What does Rohit Sharma do with his game plans, his field setting, and I mean, when does he put more faith in his spinners?
I think he has to now after lunch because they bowled quite a bit, the fast bowlers. They would be tired, and the first aim should be to try and wrap up this Australian innings quickly because you know you don't want them to have that psychological edge where they go past 500 and then they can have men round the bat. You know, scoreboard pressure at the MCG plays a huge role. You might just think the pitch is flat. Pat Cummins will be a danger man once the bounce gets variable. And don't take your eye off. I know everyone will talk of pace, Stark, Cummins, of Scotty Boland. He will hit the right areas. You watch Bay 13 when he gets the ball in his hand. You know, if you think there aren't enough people at the MCG, you will know there are enough people at the MCG when Scotty gets the ball in his hand from Bay 13.
To get towards the Indian batting, you first have to deal with a Steve Smith that is well set with what has been his 5th boxing day.
Straight away after lunch. So therein lies your chances. You don't want to try anything too flash, you know, just keep it in the right areas because he's going to take the chances and probably attack a little more.
Thanks so much for joining us here on Cricket Live with Sunil Gavaskar and Justin Langer. And these are the beauties, rather, the vagrancies of Test cricket. You have a partnership that is just blossoming after losing the Indian captain early. And then it is the Australian captain right at the stroke of tea. You look back at a session where a wicket fell early from India's innings and then a wicket right towards the end there. Morale boost. And that has been India's most disciplined batter so far, one of them.
I think so. It's a terrible sound, isn't it? And how often do you see the ball or 2 balls before a break, whether it's a drinks break or a lunch or tea break? And, KR Rahul did not look like getting out there. He was...
That we've spoken about. So there was so much talk about Rohit Sharma, remember, reviving his career as an opener. Now coming back, should he open, should he not? He pushed himself down the order in the previous test. Came back to open in this test match. It not just how much he lasted, but the manner of his dismissal. What does that tell you?
Well, I think, I wonder why was that one wicket wasted? Who knows? I mean, Rohit Sharma coming at 3 now with maybe India 50 for 1 would make a difference than Rohit Sharma coming at...
Great innings, and I loved when he scored his 100. It was almost... Last test was a tough innings. I spoke to him and he said, I had to work so hard for that. Today it was like just nodding, yes, I'm back, and that's a very good test 100. And he was acknowledging that to himself as much as he was to the crowd.
No wonder Villa was Spain's top performer, but it was just towards the end for India to extract those wickets. A few reviews, a little bit of time, the tail frustrating India, but you managed to restrict what was looking a total that was going to go towards 500. So how would India be reviewing their bowling performance towards the end?
They would have to do a serious review about their bowling because the second new ball, the new ball.
that has dominated the headlines so far. A young teenager against Virat Kohli himself. They have similar shades of energy, if you can put it that way. Just a preview of how Virat Kohli now has been viewed in Australia's media. Look, ever since Virat Kohli has come into Melbourne, he's dominated the headlines. Now let's get a few things clear as we have this conversation. One is we're not taking anything away from the debut of Sam Constance, nor are we condoning any form of physicality on a cricket place. Now what has happened is the match referee has decided, okay, you're fined 20% of your match fees. But Australian media and some Australian commentators and broadcasters are not happy with the degree of the punishment doled out. So that's what I want to ask you in terms of your perception, because it's happened before in the past between both nations where things have got heated.
Well, I think you would say that yes, the punishment may be light because of what you see, what the experience that is at, but that's the maximum punishment as decided by the ICC. So it's not that he's been done any favor. He's not been done any favor. If, for example, the fine would have been 10%, then you could have said, there's a favor done. But the fine that is allowed for that kind of an offence, level 1 offence, is a maximum of 20%. I'm not. Let me say, I'm not 100% on that, but I'm given to understand that the fine is 20% and 1 demerit point. That's the maximum allowed. So that is what has been levied on him with 1 demerit point. So no special favours have been done to him. You cannot hang a man for picking somebody's pocket. So that is what the Australian media is asking.
So why is there an uproar then?
Well, because the Australian media is asking that he should be hanged I'm just
paraphrase
for a minor offence, and they think that he's got away because he's a Kohli. But that's not the thing. I know in the year, if I might read out, I know in this particular year there have been 4 such incidents in which the
Sunny G has come with evidence.
Yes. So in last December, in Ireland bowler Joss Little was fined 15% of his match fees for physical contact with a batter, a level 1 offence in a game which Andy Pycroft was a referee. Andy Pycroft is a referee here as well. Then Jasprit Bumrah was reprimanded for a level 1 inappropriate physical contact against England's Ollie Pope. Then in Nepal player Arjun Kumar also had this, but in his case that was his second offence. So he had, in his case it was a little bit more. So what is the maximum? Now if Kohli had been fined 15% instead of the maximum 20%, then you could say, he's been let off lightly. But he's got the maximum punishment.
Just in about a minute, but I want your take on this as well.
So I would say, I mentioned it yesterday, in cricket, no player, there shouldn't be contact. We're not playing a physical game. So that's one thing I say. 2, on a cricket field, boys will be boys. We see it. We've seen this in the history. Players will be players, right? So you see some aggression, and that's part of the drama. The third point I want to make, and I want to make this very clear on this station, is this isn't an Australian media versus an Indian. The media are brutal, full stop. So they'll find the targets, and what we're seeing here is exactly what they want. They're talking about that headline in India in front of 1 billion cricket-loving people. That's what they want. That's what the media is all about. So it's not about Virat. It's not about the Indian cricket team, because I promise you, from personal experience, not that long ago, I'm an Australian. I'm a red-blooded Australian who played for my country and coached my country and loves my country, and I copped it as badly as Virat's copping it now. So it's not a personal attack on India per se. That's just the way the media now works, and it's.
Speaking about what was a special one from Cheteshwar Pujara's point of view, JL is just talking about all the nicknames that the Australian camp had for Cheteshwar Pujara when he was out in the middle. The conversation.
Don't they India wish they have Pujara here today. And that's why I was surprised they dropped Gill, actually, for this test match. They've gone for the all-rounders, and they're going to be praying they all bat well. They're going to all need to bat well. But I was surprised, because you need that bedrock player, and whilst his average at the moment in Test match is 33 or 34, I think he's a very good player, and they could have used him here today.
Certainly could have now, because Melbourne is one of the places where we see the Boxing Day Test match is something that is so exciting. Melbourne as a city is really known for their sport. If you have cricket,
that was it. So I sometimes feel, the way Pujara was batting, maybe even, instead of sleeping, he was always in his dream. He was still batting, whatever it is. But both of them, they were the key for that recovery that India needed.
I want to know what that dry smile when he said he was never bored of batting.
Well,
what that meant for you, Jay.
The little master also said something about sleeping, right? To this day, 4 years later, I still wake up in my sleep thinking about Pujara and the heartache he gave us in those test matches. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was the coach, and you don't lose in Australia. You don't lose to India in Australia. Sometimes I'm asleep, and there's Pujara just batting, and I wake up, I'm just in a sweat. I still think about that. So Pujara, I know you're all smiley and a nice man on the TV, but he was a warrior, and he gave us a lot of heartache out here in Australia.
You have to tap into that series, you have to tap into the inspirations from that. But as I said, this is a city that is known very much for its sport, and the sport of kabaddi comes to Melbourne tomorrow in a very special PKL raid. A very special PKL Melbourne raid tomorrow, and besides these extraordinary openers here, extraordinary individuals from India, Captain Anup Kumar joins us along with AFL player who's also the captain of the Aussie Raiders, Joshua Kennedy. Anup, I mean, इतना बहुत ही रोमांचक मुकाबला है सबके लिए. From the perspective of कि भारत से अब मेलबर्न कबड्डी का त्योहार चलेगा, आप क्या महसूस कर रहे हैं?
देखिए, काफ़ी अच्छा एक ये इवेंट होने वाला है और मुझे बड़ी खुशी है कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया में कबड्डी खेली जाएगी और मैं उस टीम का कैप्टन रहूँगा, तो बड़ी खुशी की बात है. और इस तरीके के अगर इवेंट कबड्डी में होते रहेंगे, कबड्डी और ज़्यादा ग्रो करेगा.
And Joshua, you had an opportunity to visit the PKL that's going on at the moment. What was that atmosphere like for you?
Mayanti, it was fantastic. It was a great experience. Very fortunate and grateful to the PKL for hosting me over in Delhi. I got to see 4 games over the weekend. I was blown away by how intense it was, how strong, fast and athletic the players were. I suppose like a lot of live sports, when you see it up close and personal, you don't appreciate how quick it is on TV. And it was just a great experience. Everyone was so friendly and accommodating. The food was fantastic, and who knows whether we ever go back, but it was great.
Won't be friendly tomorrow. That's what we want to see between the two
No, not
teams.
too friendly tomorrow, but it should be a lot of fun.
Justin, you spent so much time in India. Have you ever seen kabaddi? Have you witnessed it on TV as well? Have you seen the PKL?
I have. One, we're talking about one of our heroes in Australia.
I know, yes.
And I also know in that sport, you're allowed to bump each other and wrestle each other, okay? Yeah. Not in cricket, but you can in that sport. So we want to see lots of it. And I have seen it. One of our, Deepak Huda, who played for LSG last year, I think his father has played a lot of the sport. So I got to, and obviously it's on TV a lot in India, so I got to see it over there. So it's going to be fun to watch.
तो अनूप, आप तो कोच के रूप में भी अभी मौजूद है, पर आप कप्तानी के रूप में वापसी बनाएंगे, बैक ऑन द मैट. कुछ नर्वसनेस, एंजाइटी, आई मीन आपके लिए कैसे चलेगा?
देखिए, नर्वसनेस तो नहीं है. बाकी कबड्डी छोड़े काफ़ी टाइम हो गया, 6-7 साल हो गए, पर एक्साइटमेंट है यहाँ पे ना. बाहर आके खेलना, दोबारा से इंडिया को रिप्रेजेंट करना मेरे लिए बड़ी गर्व की बात मानता हूँ मैं. और मुझे मौका मिला, दोबारा कबड्डी ने मौका दिया है, तो मैं बिल्कुल एकदम उत्साहित हूँ, एक्साइटेड हूँ कि हमारा कल का जो मैच होगा काफ़ी अच्छा होगा और जितने भी हमारे फैंस देखेंगे वो भी उस मैच को देख के काफ़ी खुश होंगे. आप
ही भारत के इतने सुपरस्टार है, एशियन गेम्स में गोल्ड मेडलिस्ट, सारे फैंस तो बहुत खुश होंगे क्योंकि अनूप दोबारा मैच पे नजर आएंगे. दिस इज अ cauldron for cricket but also a cauldron for the AFL. So the similarities, if any, that you can draw from your sport?
With AFL and kabaddi? Yeah. Look, obviously the athleticism, strength, power, agility. This is a huge field compared to a kabaddi court, but also working together defensively and the spatial awareness too. Obviously, being able to get tackled from anywhere, 360 degrees. So there's a few crossovers, but also a lot to learn. It's been a big learning curve, learning the rules, the intricacies of the game. It's a fantastic game. It's been a lot of fun, but it has been a lot to learn too.
अंत में अनूप, एक संदेश, वन मैसेज हमारे मेलबर्न रेडर्स के लिए, हमारे मेलबर्न के जो लोग आएंगे, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के लोग के लिए, एक संदेश उनका.
देखिए, मैं जितने भी फैंस हमारे मेलबर्न से जितने भी लोग कल कबड्डी देखने आएंगे, मैं उनको यही मैसेज देना चाहता हूं कि कबड्डी बहुत ही ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग गेम है और मैं आप सबसे गुजारिश करता हूं कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोग इस मैच को देखने आएँ और देखें कि कबड्डी किस तरीके से खेले जाती है और कैसे कैसे खिलाड़ी इंडिया के और कैसे आपकी कंट्री के जो कल हमारे साथ खेलने वाले हैं। तो सभी को मैं ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा संख्या में बुलाना चाहूँगा कि आएँ और मैच को देखें और इंटरटेनमेंट करें।
Absolutely. And Joshua, you want to throw down the gauntlet? Any pre-game, war game messages before the big one?
No, I'll let the actions do the talking tomorrow night, Anita. But no, I want to thank Anup and the PKL for hosting this game and for putting it on and for sending their players out of retirement, myself included, dusting off the cobwebs, and hopefully we can put on a great game, an exhibition, and you know, the Melbourne people, the Australian people, can see what this sport is about and get around it, because it is a lot of fun, and you know, from boys and girls to adults, it's a lot of fun to play, and I can really see it taking off. So it's a great initiative, and I'm so grateful to be involved.
Both the leaders, Joshua Kennedy and Anup Kumar, will be in action tomorrow. It's very special. 2 p.m. is when the coverage starts. Don't miss out on it, gentlemen. Thank you. Looking forward to it. All the best to you. Gentlemen, please stay. We have more cricket to discuss. We will take a breather. We'll be right back. Just goes to show you how fine the margins for error are in this fine game, and no one would know it better than these two extraordinary openers, in Justin Langer and Sunil Gavaskar. And Sunny G, when you look at 474 that was posted after Steve Smith's stunning 34th Test century, you had a 100-run partnership building between Yashasvi Jaiswal and Virat Kohli. Two of them both looking to make those sort of additions and adaptations, but the manner in which their dismissals unfolded, it sets India back.
It certainly does, because both were badly with not having scored runs in the previous 2 games, would be wanting to make up for that. So it looked very secure at that stage. There was no playing or missing. There was nothing where it looked as if they were in any sort of trouble. Yes, there was that appeal against Yashasvi Jaiswal, but I thought that, you know, it was pitching outside the leg stump, which is exactly what it turned out to be of Mitch Marsh. So clearly, I think at that stage, everything looked secure. It was just a matter of another 20-30 minutes, and it would have been the end of the day's play. India could have been 118 instead of 164. India could have been 184 for 2, and would have been in a very, very good position for tomorrow.
JL, when you look back at all of the Indian wickets that did fall today, in the manners and the timings of when they were extracted, at the start of play, Rohit Sharma back to open, and KL just before at the strike of...
Ball off Scotty Boland, because again they know to win this test match they had to not only break the partnership but then get Virat Kohli. They've done that tonight, and they'll be buoyant in the change room this evening.
There was definitely a lot of buoyancy in the celebrations every time a wicket fell. For Yashasvi Jaiswal, he came out there with a different sort of assurity, knowing that, listen, obviously you practice a lot. You practice at the nets, you practice and then want to put it into a motion, which he did a little bit. So when you look back at his...
And then he was waiting for the ball. He played really well. Dismissal was unfortunate, but that's how the game of cricket is. It can be, you know, it can take you up there and bring you down there the next moment.
And in the past, we've seen the left arm seam angle trouble him a little bit against South Africa. You saw it against Andre Berger, Mitchell Starc. So the adjustments that he made to Mitchell Starc, what were your observations on that?
Yeah, I thought he hit too square of the wicket, and if you miss it, you get an LBW. He hit one to square leg in the last Test match. But he looked to be a little taller in his stance and looking to hit straight down the ground. And against left-handers, it's the key for a left-hand batter to play against the left arm. We see this here. I mean, he just, instead of his times today, and that was a very good sign to me.
If you go back to day one, just before the start of play, there was a Ravi Shastri interview with Virat Kohli where he spoke about the fact, I need to show a little more discipline. I have been practicing just to leave the ball, to trust that instinct a little more. We saw it in his practices. So when you look at his approach today, when he walked, and that will be the channel that will be bold to you as well. It was just after that unfortunate run out between the two of them. They'd got a 100-run partnership. You go back to Rohit Sharma's dismissal. Now, both of you have been in those situations. You've opened...
But he's also got the experience to know how to get out of it. This will be the great challenge for him.
Mentally, you said, let them open, I'll come in the middle. Next game, you're back into open. How would you expect Rohit Sharma, considering you know him so well as well, Sunny Ji, how do you expect him now to approach his next innings? Where does he go from here?
Well, I think he needs a bit of luck as well. I think, you know, the first mistake he's making is he's getting out. He needs a little bit of luck down there. But honestly, if he had got some runs in Brisbane, for example, if he had got 30, 35 and then got out, and then he wanted to open the batting, it would have made sense. But he hadn't got runs. So therefore, against a moving ball on pitches which are a little bit different than what he's normally used to, number 3 was probably the right number for him. Number 5 or 6 was probably, with the way he's playing at the moment, 5, 6 would be the right thing. But once you leave out Shubman Gill, then to push Rahul, who's been your most consistent batter, to number 3, that did not make sense to me. If anything, if a change if somebody had to come in place of Shubman Gill, it had to be Rohit Sharma at 3, or I would have taken a chance with a young Nitish Reddy at 3. I would have said, or even a Washington Sundar at 3, and not disturb the opening combination of Jaiswal and KL Rahul.
Well, that's the adjustment that Australia have made with Steve Smith. No, you're not going to open the innings. You're going to go back to where you feel like you belong. A 34th Test century from someone who we can well and truly say in this format is a modern master. What did you enjoy the most, JL, in his innings today?
I love here at the Cauldron, at the MCG, and he's really proud of that innings.
He's got 5 centuries now at the MCG, averages in the high 80s. And just at the end of day's play, Mark Nicholas caught up with Steve Smith. Australia is now the 3rd fastest at 34 Test centuries, just behind some very elite company that includes Sachin Tendulkar as well. And the way that Australia with the bat dominated the morning session just goes on to the question to India with the ball. Just they did not have enough game plans in terms of just being able to apply them, but also the resources to go to.
Yeah, well, I mean, immediately after the interview, I congratulated him, welcomed him to the 34th century club. And I said to him, I know you're not going to stay with this club for too long. Maybe by the next test, maybe by the next innings, he will have gone to the 35 centuries club. But yes, I think India didn't quite have the resources, if you could say that, because today with the second new ball just being 6 overs old, you thought that they would be able to effect the breakthrough. I don't think there was enough planning as well, as JL said about the fact that, Pat Cummins does not like the short ball. We have not been experimenting with the short ball at all. It's almost as if you're not allowed to bowl the short ball. And I'm surprised that with a bowling coach like Moni Morkel from South Africa, who was also quite liberal with the short ball, we're just not seeing it. We didn't see it against Travis Head. We've allowed him to score a couple of hundreds. He's a good player. I'm not saying he would have got out. But, you test the batter. We didn't do that.
Are you okay if it leaks, it goes for these extras to employ the short ball? Sometimes it can be a little risky from the Indian bowlers.
No, I mean, if you get the short ball right, if you're going to bowl a half-hearted short ball which is going to come around the midriff, that's going to go for runs. But we saw how uncomfortable Pat Cummins was when they started to bowl. But by that time, it already raised to 30. And the game had just, you just lost the game at that stage. The first over today cost you 8 runs. Mohammad Siraj bowling the over. He wasn't warmed up enough. You could see that he was taking his time to settle in. But that's not how you play Test cricket.
Well, when you look at the start of what happened today as well, Australia were very comfortable with their scoring rate towards the start, scoring at over 5 runs and over. You saw because it's a challenge for both of the left-handers that will be out there. There was a mammoth 474 that was put ahead of you. The game plans for Rishabh Pant and Ravindra Jadeja, because you will go into the all-rounders now. Although Ravindra Jadeja we will say is a recognised batter, but after them you will go into those all-rounders. So how do they essentially stick to their game plans and what Australia will bowl up into?
Well, they must be thinking time. They must runs, obviously, but these guys will score runs naturally, but they must be thinking time. I agree exactly with what Sonny said. The more time they can play out here, their first target must be drinks, their second target must be to get to lunch. They must bat time to get Australia thinking about their strategy as well. So with time will come runs, and Australia as a country, 100 tomorrow, but at least he needs to put the pressure back on the Australian cricket team.
And if he doesn't get, I'm going to catch him and ask him why is he not getting 100.
Okay, we'll let you think about that, Shane.
Well, because he hasn't had me coaching him yet.
Nice.
Give me that one. Give me a little bit of time with him and it will just get him. But look, it's been interesting with Rishabh, though. The times he's got out in this series has been when he's playing defence. He just says when he plays defence, he needs to sniff the ball because he's so aggressive and he plays the ball to all parts of the ground. But when he's defending, he's either got to be smelling the ball or leaving the ball like Virat did today.
Rishabh Pant knows Australian conditions, knows Australian bowlers, has enough experience here to play a certain type of role. But what sort of batter, which version of Rishabh Pant should walk out tomorrow?
I think
if you're looking at a bad time.
A combination of somebody who's not going to miss out on the scoring opportunity when the loose ball comes along. He will create scoring opportunities. That's the kind of...
Has definitely not just moved up the order but got on high in those status. Now he also is incredibly experienced.
Yeah, and another great competitor. Both of them are huge competitors, and India need that. They need that, these guys to compete. They've got to be like warriors.
There could be a Washington Sundar that will also come in. The game plans of when Australia, how much they will utilise Nathan Lyon as well.
I think they'll obviously start with their seam bowling attack. That's what's got them wickets. So they're not going to get to Nathan Lyon soon. Maybe after an hour and a half or so, they might go to him. But I can't see them bringing Nathan Lyon very early, because yes, there is a little bit of a turn on offer. But the roller that will be used, the fact that the grass will also have been shaved off a little bit, will make batting just a little bit easier as well. And that is what India need to capitalise on, that roller and the fact that the grass will be shaved off even more than it was today.
Same question to you really in terms of Australia's batting plans, what we expect to see in that morning session, and the utilisation of spin.
I know that Nathan Lyon loves bowling to left-handers, and when he bowls to Rishabh, he will definitely, knowing he'll be aggressive, he'll bowl wider and wider and wider. I think we saw it in Perth for his dismissal, but he'll just keep dragging Rishabh wider and wider and letting him try and hit it over there. So Nathan Lyon loves bowling to spinners. Pat Cummins knows how important Nathan Lyon is to this team, because he can also bowl a lot of overs. So yeah, well, maybe the seamers early, but it won't be long before Nathan Lyon, particularly to the left-handers, in.
Well, that's where Nitish Reddy and the utilisation of him and when he comes in becomes interesting, because he's got a couple of very useful 40s on this tour and he plays a certain way.
Yes, I think